Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday morning, because it is morning here at the Fun House
Absolutely.
alongside
Yeah.
Mr. Martin Popoff. What's going
Yeah.
on, Martin?
Well, nothing much. It's a cool morning here, but of course, we're dealing with fires. We've had the Hawaii tragic situation, and now there's actually two fairly large urban areas in Canada that are in trouble, right? Yellowknife and Kelowna.
So, what did you have, like a month of kind of no fires, and then boom, we're back again? Is that
I
kind
don't know if it's like they fell out of the news or they were
so
slightly
they're still
smaller.
going
They
on?
weren't near urban areas, but right now they're dealing with two big urban areas that are looking at fires. So
Yeah, it's just scary. Too much of that, right? Yeah, the stuff going on in Maui is just it's heartbreaking. Really is. The devastation. It's just crazy. I was talking to Jim Baki the other day, who goes to Hawaii a lot and has people that he's close to there, and he was telling us some of the things they've been saying. It's just crazy to think people are just jumping in the ocean just to escape and sitting there in the water, just watching everything just going up in flames. People like living in their pools for hours on end because everything is lit up around them. It's just like the only place you're safe is in the water. It's crazy.
yeah.
So.
And the conspiracy theories, watching all these different crazy theories about why all this happened, right? Yeah. I saw a neat article on just the idea that fires seem to bring out conspiracy theories a lot. And you notice that with the Canadian fires as well, right?
Yeah, fire people, they start very easily and they can go out of control very quickly. I don't know. It's really nothing more to explain other than that.
Yeah.
If someone sets them off on purpose, well, then that's the issue. But still, a fire is so easy to start, and with the weather being so hot and dry, they get out of control very, very quickly. So. Anyway, Martin and I have a fun topic today, all about live albums. We love talking about live albums, even though I know Martin deep down inside is not 100% true fan of a lot of live albums. But I personally love live albums, and I think this episode is really interesting because it's this whole topic of when is a live album more than just a live album, right? There's lots of things that to come into play, lots of different flavors of live albums. And Martin, I was thinking about this morning. We didn't even really talk about discussing, and maybe we could do it at the end real quick, about these live albums that most people don't believe are even live. That's like a totally separate category. But
Yeah.
we've got a bunch of categories here. Live albums with a new studio track or two, live albums where half the album is a studio album, half studio, half live. Live albums where all the material is brand new material that you'd never heard before. Various combinations and things. So we've both got. We're each going to tackle a segment, and we've got show and tell. We got lots of examples of some of these, and I'll have Martin kick us off with new songs debuted live on the album.
Yeah, it's interesting. That is a whole category we didn't talk about here. So this has nothing to do with faking live albums. It's more like just special doodads on these albums, right? So my first category is this new songs debuted live thing. I mean, one of the biggest and most exciting examples was Rainbow on Stage when we got Kill the King, because that's such a horrible live album, almost as bad as Made in Japan, right? Just one of these albums with lots of long songs and jamming, but we got Kill the King before we got Long Live Rock and Roll, and that just drove us insane. But I think the better example is Ted Nugent live Gonzo. And I don't know. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but my whole life I spent looking at this. This looks like Big Bird with an eye here, and it doesn't look like him covering his ears. Like if you look at it like this, doesn't it look like a bird?
It does, yeah. It looks like a budgie with long hair, Martin.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a budgie album cover for you. But no, the amazing thing here with this album is we got what did we get here? We got Gonzo, Yank Me, Crank Me, as new songs on here. I think there was one other one here, but yeah, good heavy new songs on this double live Gonzo that kept you interested. And the other thing about this album is it went back to the Amboy Dukes days for what we got: Hibernation. We got the Baby Please Don't Go cover. We got Great White Buffalo. So he's telling us a little bit about at least the recent past. Of the Ted Nugent band before he became Ted Nugent. But yeah, you got these great new heavy songs on here, especially Yank Me, Crank Me. That was a really well. Gonzo was good too. So that's a good example there. A not so great example is No Leaf Clover and Human off of the S&M album. This is a special feature album in itself because it's one of these horrendous with orchestra things. And I actually played this morning again to hear those new songs. And man, the whole idea of putting the orchestra in there sounds terrible. Like it's just this weird buzzing, like you got a radio on in another room, and you're hearing, there's these strings sawing away, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, there's two new Metallica songs on this thing, with the strings going on. And then we've got the likes of Cheap Trick at Budokan, where you got Lookout and Need Your Love. So Lookout didn't show up on an album, but Need Your Love showed up on the next album, Dream Police, right off of this. So this was kind of interesting. And it oddly, weirdly was an introduction to the band for a lot of people. It's a band having a hit album with a live album. Let's see. And then we had the likes of this is kind of like a not great one, but this is almost like a rip-off situation where you've got Max Webster Live Magnetic Air, because everything comes back to Max Webster, doesn't it? We've got, basically all these songs are from the albums, except we've got something that it doesn't sound promising anyways. Sarnia Town Reggae. They do tell you how long it is, 1:21. And all it is like a short reggae version of The Party, which is a great, big, important Max Webster Live song, which they didn't put on this album. So that's a single live album. And I can't find, where is the other one that I had here? So, maybe I didn't. So the other big one that is related to that is the Kim Mitchell live album. Again, another single live album called I Am a Wild Party. I think it's parentheses live, but it's got the song on it called oh yeah, maybe that's because it's on the live one. So deep dive and I Am a Wild Party are the two new songs. Neither of them are very good. I Am a Wild Party is kind of like this weird comedic rhythmic sort of song. It turned out to be a bit of a hit because it is kind of a strange song. Just almost like an interesting sort of novelty song. Live Quartz is a funny one this way. New songs debuted live. I would say the biggest important thing. So this is a new wave of British heavy metal band. They had a first album called Quartz or Deleted, came in the paper bag. Their second album, weirdly, was this live album, really crappy live album. Had a Round and Round on it, and or Roll Over Beethoven, a Vanda and Young thing on it. It had Mainline Riders on it, which is their amazing song. But Count Dracula was the most important thing that you got on that one for a new song. Thin Lizzy Live and Dangerous. You've got Are You Ready, which was a short, sharp, shocking snapper, just a good, heavy song. It's a little bit like Hello There, Cheap Trick, Hello There. You also got Cowgirl's Song, which of course is a little bit of a rip-off sort of situation where you knew it wasn't going to be. It's a derivation sort of thing. You got Baby Drives Me Crazy, which is crap as well. Are You Ready was covered by Rollins, which is kind of neat later on. Scorpions, remember when we got Suspender Love and All Night Long on the Tokyo Tapes album? That was pretty cool as well. And you also got this sort of this ballad in Japanese, Kojo no Suki, and you got Kimi ga Go, Japanese national anthem on there. Let's see, what else do we got? Oh yeah, the whole Guns N' Roses situation where they debut with a weird quasi live acoustic EP thing, and then the album comes out, and then so that thing's a bit of a weird one. And then a bit of in a gray area, you've got Queen Live Killers with the fast version of We Will Rock You. You've got Iggy and the Stooges' Metallic KO, which comes out at a really weird time in their history, so it's got a bunch of strange stuff on it as well, non-album. And you've got the Notorious Angel Live Without a Net album, the last album they ever put out, a double live album, Gatefold, which has 20th Century Foxes on it. Their crappy disco song. Boy, what else we got? Wings Over America. Soily, Frank Marino, Mahogany Rush, Purple Haze. There we go. Johnny B. Good, Jimi Hendrix, Woodstock, Isabella. Yeah, Leonard Skinner, one from the road. There we go. Humble Pie Performance, Rockin' the Fillmore. I Don't Need No Doctor. Wow, you took out a lot of stuff here. Let's see. Grand Funk Railroad Live, Who Live at Leeds, Fleetwood Mac live. Yeah. So there's a lot of these that have these extras on it as well. But yeah, very cool. Thanks for flashing all those. I think that's it for category 1.
Yeah, and I realized that the Isabella from Woodstock is kind of cheating
Oh.
because this album didn't come out till later on.
Yeah.
But Isabella was on none of the studio albums when Jimmy was still alive. I believe it came out on the one of those posthumous releases a couple years afterwards. But you know, at the time when he was playing that on tour, it's, you know, and I don't know about you, Martin, but Traveling Man from Skinnerd is something that always should have been on a studio album. So it's kind of cool to have that.
Yeah.
One last one too that I just kind of found last minute. Todd Rundgren's Utopia Another Live is a weird one because this is the second album the band puts out, and it's got The Wheel and Mr. Triscuits on it, which are songs that never appeared anywhere else, and the rest of this is basically just Todd Rundgren songs. In fact, I think Another Life is new too. Most of this is just brand new stuff. So you know, kind of weird. I guess that could go in one of the other categories, right? Which some of these kind of bleed over into each other. So all right, let's see. Half live, half studio, or close enough. I love Martin's description of that in our notes. So these are basically albums where in many cases they're double albums, or if they're single albums, it's one side live, one side studio. And I've got a whole bunch here to talk about. Probably one of the more famous ones from early on is ZZ Top's Fandango. All right, which is you know, notable tracks like Tush and Nasty Dogs and Funky Kings, Blue Jean Blues, and Heard It on the X. And then the live side is kind of like covers and 50s stuff and, you know, some kind of interesting bits. I don't know. Personally, I really like Fandango, but I think it should have either been a full blown live album or a full blown studio album. I think both show a lot of promise. Yeah, there you go. So that's very cool. We got Santana Moonflower, double live album. It was always promoted as a double live album, but actually there's almost as much studio stuff on here as there is live stuff, and it works really well both ways. And it's funny how the studio tracks are just intermingled among the live tracks as opposed to some of these others where it's like, okay, here's your live side, here's your studio side. Here it's all blended in, which is kind of bizarre. Pink Floyd Umaguma. All right, side 1 and 2 recorded live in Birmingham and Manchester. Side 3 and 4 all new studio solo creations. Really weird stuff too, but you know, whatever. People are very much into that. We got Moody Blues live +5, double album, 3 sides live, 4th side all new studio tracks, but the studio tracks were kind of leftovers from the previous studio albums, so it's not like they recorded brand new ones. We got Cream Wheels of Fire double album, sides 1 and 2 all new studio tracks, 3 and 4 recorded live in Winterland and the Fillmore West, and of course lots of jamming. You got Crossroads, Spoonful, Train Time, Toad, you know, all sorts of big sprawling jams. Here's one of the more famous ones. So this is Eat a Peach by the Allman Brothers. So Duane Allman was killed in the middle of the recording sessions for the studio album. It was originally just supposed to be a studio album. He only appears on 3 of the 6 studio tracks, and then to fill out the album, then they decided to make it a double album. So they took all the songs that didn't quite fit on the live double album, the Fillmore album, and they threw them on here. So you got like the, you know, 33-minute Mountain Jam and, you know, Trouble No More and a bunch of other things. And so this becomes the final testament of Duane Allman. So he appears on all the live tracks and just half of the studio tracks. Another weird one, King Crimson, Starless, and Bible Black. Some people might be puzzled by this choice, but the facts are that the songs on this album were like kind of studio patchwork creations. So they took like all these live recordings of improvs and things and then added in all sorts of studio stuff to it to make this kind of like Frankenstein monster hybrid live album, hybrid studio album. So it's really called a studio album, but so much of what's on here are pieces from live performances. So that's kind of an interesting one. Of course, we got The Great Double Trouble by Gillan. First 2 sides, all new studio material. 3 and 4 taken from the Reading Festival. What's interesting, the live recordings, you have some featuring Yannick Gers, who was kind of the new guy on the block at the time, and then some featuring Bernie Torme, who was already out of the band. But some really memorable stuff on here and scorching live versions of some early Gillan classics. So that's a good one. Marshall Tucker Band, Where We All Belong. Again, sides 1 and 2, all new studio songs. 3 and 4, older Marshall Tucker Band classics, taped from a show in Wisconsin. And interestingly enough, I say older Marshall Tucker Band classics, but this is a pretty early album in their catalog. So again, kind of odd, kind of like with ZZ Top 2, doing like a live, half live, half studio, like so soon in their discography. One of the more famous ones, Kiss Alive 2. 3 sides live, 4th side, all new studio recordings. Although, who played on the studio tracks has always been very questionable. And I'd argue half of them are pretty crappy, but we do have a couple bangers in there. Rocket Ride is great. All American Man rocks pretty well. Larger Than Life isn't too bad. I think any way you want, they probably could have skipped, right, Martin?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but Rocket Ride, possibly
Rocket Ride is
his
terrific
song ever, right?
Yeah, Rocket Ride, I would say, is probably even Ace's best song. I love Rocket Ride. And then I don't know, Martin, if you have a copy, but Genesis 3 Sides Live. So live recordings from 1976 to 81. And then the 4th side is comprised of the studio EP 3x3 from 1982 and a couple B-sides left over from the Duke album. So pretty good recordings there. And you got some nice renditions from the late 70s band of some of the earlier material, and plus, some of that. And then there were 3 and Duke and all that kind of stuff. So pretty cool stuff. Good recordings. I think that covers them. What else we got here? Thunder and Lightning also do want to mention, came out as a gatefold in the UK with a 4-track live EP.
All right. Yeah, I don't have that. Yeah, it was a gatefold. Yeah, I kind of forgot that or didn't know that or something for a long time. But yeah, I guess just to help sell it, right?
Yeah. You have the band The Damned released the Black Album, their 4th album. All right.
Yeah, I got my Canadian copy, which had none of that stuff. It didn't have curtain call. They did like this 17-minute, I think it's 17, progressive sort of long piece, and then they had a bunch of stuff from this live at Shepperton that was part of it, although not the whole thing. So yeah, Black Album was a double in the UK, and that I didn't know for a long time as a kid either.
Yeah, go figure, right? All right, so we'll move on to the next category, which are studio songs tacked on to the end of a live album to help sell it or whatever.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, before we leave this, I loved Paper Laid and Me and Virgil. The extra stuff on here is so cool because it's one of my favorite eras of that band. And man, Fandango is just burns me. That studio side is so good that just would have been one of the greatest albums of all time. Had they had the other side be a bunch.
Yeah, I agree. And we've often talked about how ZZ Top didn't have that like kind of classic live album from the 70s. And they should have. Yeah. And I think that because all we've got is the live side of Fandango, which the live side to me is kind of lackluster. I would have just rather had a studio album where another side was just as banging as that studio side on that album. Because I think that would have been one of their best albums right there.
Yeah. So this category, loosely speaking, maybe all this is perfect, maybe not, but studio songs tacked on to help sell albums. Triumph Stages had an absolutely god-awful couple of songs there. Mind Games and Empty Inside. Empty Inside has kind of like a cool big Zeppelin-esque drum beat to it, which is kind of neat. But it is kind of like a big blues ballad. And Mind Games is just one of their horrible, bad botched attempts at hair metal that they were trying to do around this time. They were trying to move into that space and they just couldn't do it. But yeah, that was there was that one. Journey Captured, Dixie Highway, kind of like a melodic up-tempo shuffle sort of song, which is pretty cool. And then the lone studio track, The Party's Over, Hopelessly in Love, released as a single, poppy perky sort of thing. Weird recording, number 34 on Billboard, 33 in Canada. Oh yeah, so here's where I had the Kim Mitchell. That's right, because they were studio songs. So yeah, we've got the Kim Mitchell, I Am a Wild Party. There's a shot of that. And like I say, that was on radio a lot here in Canada. And then Halford Live Insurrection is just a blast, period. This is the way to do a live album. This has so many cool bells and whistles all over it, like great songs that you wouldn't expect them to play live. Plus it had, but these aren't that good. They had the brand new studio recording, Screaming in the Dark. Heart of a Lion and Prisoner of Your Eyes are both studio as well. Neither of those are particularly good songs. Screaming in the Dark's all right. But you've also got them doing Light Comes Out of Black on here, the thing they did. And that's studio with added crowd noise, right? And Life in Black, same kind of thing. So this has all sorts of good stuff happening. It's 2 discs. And just a bunch of great, Stained Class is on here, Jawbreaker is on here. So he's going through the whole catalog. And I believe, there's some fight stuff here as well. Nailed to the Guns on here. So this is just it's almost a metaphor for the idea of when we talk about Metallica and Iron Maiden knowing what to cover that the fans would like. Rob puts together a live album here knowing what the fans would like. I mean, right. This is the way to keep you interested as you go through a live album, rather than Made in Japan or On Stage or the live side of Double Trouble. Because even Ian had that same problem with covers and long versions of songs and stuff, right? We've got Dio Intermission with this horrible cover, and just a missed opportunity that they didn't make a whole live album. It's just a live EP, but it's got Time to Burn on here as a new song to introduce Craig. And King of Rock and Roll, Rainbow in the Dark, Sacred Heart. I mean, EPs, right? We just drives us crazy. But anyways, you get Time to Burn on there. You've got Sticks Caught in the Act, which opens with a song almost as bad as anything off of Triumph Stages. You've got Music Time, this crappy little, Kilroy is Here type song.
Completely unmemorable.
Studio track to open your double live album. Hey, how smart is that, right? But that's really bad. It goes into Mr. Roboto, which suspiciously doesn't sound very live either on here. I don't know much about this record, but it's got a lot of good classics on it, of course. This is one I've always kind of liked. Terrible album cover. Golden Earring usually has great album covers. But look at those font choices. Hey, all 3 of them kind of weird. But anyway, Something Down is showcasing this really cool new Golden Earring song, Something Heavy Going Down in a studio version, and then it's got some great live tracks. But unfortunately, only besides that, only six tracks on here. So you got Mission Impossible at 8:40, Twilight Zone at 9:32, Radar Love at 9:26. Terrible. Long Blonde Animal is even long. What a great song, 6:15. But so that's kind of a missed opportunity. It's it's almost too short to make it a hodgepodge with a studio song. Let's see, we've got Y&T Open Fire with Summertime Girls, which is sort of a mid-level, meat and potatoes, working collar sort of hair metal song. Not that great. But again, on a live album. So the rest of it, you only get 7 songs. So it's only a single live album. But good songs on it, that's for sure. Pretty good. Average, I'd say. But Summertime Blues. And we've got the likes of Black Sabbath Reunion. There's the VHS CD and Backstage Pass version. But of course, the big deal about this is you got Psycho Man and Selling My Soul. You got these new songs, which were actually pretty cool, stuck on a live album. Let's see what else we got here. Poison Swallow This Live had a whole bunch of studio stuff. I didn't pull those out, but there's 4 songs on there. Deep Purple's Nobody's Perfect, side 4 ends with a new studio version of Hush. Cream Live Cream, Free Live, Get Where I Belong. So there you go. And the whole idea here was just to jazz these things up. Jazz them up. I mean, number one, to get people to like them, but it's almost an excuse to have an album that's going to have the band's new almost standalone single on it to generate some more activity. And in a lot of cases, it totally worked. So
Yep, for sure. And Fleetwood Mac Live also had 2 new studio tracks as well. So that seems to be kind of a trend around that time. All right, so let's grab an additional stuff. So next, how about a live album that has all new material? Right, you would think that would be unheard of in most cases, and we didn't see this all too often. This is probably like one of the categories that they're kind of rare. So probably the first time, or one of the first times that something like this ever went down was, and again, debut album. Why not release a live debut album with all new material, right, from a band that nobody knows, the MC5, Kick Out the Jams, right? We're gonna put out a live album.
Scary as
Of
hell.
course, it's all new material, right? So that takes
Yeah.
some balls, but that's one of the great examples of that, and that really works, right? Because again, you don't
Who
know
does that look like, Pete? Who does that look like on the back cover?
who does it look like. Which one? The
That one. To me,
John
it
Pop.
always looked like Elvis.
It looks
Right?
like a mashup of Elvis and John Popper.
Yeah, exactly, John Popper. But yeah, as a kid, I always, you get these things in your mind. It's like so forever I thought Rob Tyner looked like Elvis, because of that, right? Yeah.
What else we got here? So of course you have Intense Cities by Ted Nugent.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember when this came out, I was pretty psyched because again, we hadn't had a live album since the Double Live Gonzo, and then this comes out, and I remember like, gee, I don't know any of these songs, and then you listen to them, and I got these songs are all kind of silly, but the guitar playing on it is pretty raucous and good. It's a good sounding live album, but I just think most of these songs are just absolutely ridiculous. But I do like the guitar playing, so that's a good example of that. We got Jane's Addiction, right? Here we go. First album live. You got the Guns N' Roses first EP, expanded, GNR Lives. All right. What else we got here? So here's let's see, get my stuff. So here we have the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Between Nothingness and Eternity. Mm-hmm. This is live from Central Park. This was the last released album from this lineup of the band, and of course they actually were in the studio recording a new album which never came to fruition at the time. It was later released, but so this was basically all tracks that were supposed to be on the third album played live. One of the classic ones, Frank Zappa and the Mothers, Roxy and Elsewhere. This is like 98% all new stuff. The only song on here is More Trouble Every Day, which was from Freak Out, the first Zappa and the Mothers album. Everything else on here is all new creations. So very, very cool there. You've got, of course, Jimi Hendrix and the Band of Gypsies, live album recorded New Year's Eve, all new stuff by the new lineup. Kind of ballsy to do that. You got Neil Young and Crazy Horse, live album, 2 studio tracks on here as well, but the rest of it's all live stuff, all new recordings, Hey, Hey, My, Powderfinger, all that good stuff. And then I'll finish it off with Miles Davis, who kind of made a habit of doing this. So here we've got Miles Davis at the Fillmore West called Black Beauty. You've got Dark Magus, and then Miles Davis in concert. And basically, these are all live recordings of like improvs and jams where Miles and the band would take like studio tracks and like change them, throw them into a blender and expand them to like 15-20 minutes per track. So in a sense, like the essence of some of these songs, or these compositions I should say, were actual studio songs or tracks or compositions, but they would just take them and just throw half the stuff out the window and add to them and improv on them. So kind of really unique. And they would title them, he would title them all sorts of like, Black Beauty, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Dark Mages, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. And each part would be like 15, 20, 25 minutes. And so, you would hear little bits and pieces of compositions that you're familiar with, but then they would go off into all sorts of different places. But that's jazz for you, right? So, yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Another one part of this category, which I always found interesting, were, when you would get these live albums that are compilations of 3 or 4 or 5 bands to document a scene as it's coming up. So you got the Boston Live at the Rat album, Live at Max's Kansas City. You've got the seminal old punk one, Live at the Roxy WC2 or whatever it's called, with the, X-Ray Specs and Buzzcocks and I think Eaters on there, maybe Slaughter and the Dogs. But so that's kind of cool. And then, I couldn't think of too many of these, but there's more of these bands. There's a lot of bands who put out their first album as a live album simply because it's easier to do than and cheaper than to get into the studio. But one of those that's infamous in the new wave of British heavy metal is the A to Z album, The Witch of Berkeley. or Live the Witch of Berkeley, with the spooky ritual front cover thing going. And then that's the only album they ever did. They had a couple of other singles which were really promising. We know Simon Wright came from that band, but the live album is just not very good. It's not very well recorded. But you're hearing all these original songs that you're thinking, oh boy, it would have been kind of cool to get an actual
Put them in the
album
studio.
from those
Yeah, and
guys.
you mentioned the whole like kind of cost of things. Another one that just came to mind is the first Hot Tuna album, which was recorded live, and it was like 80% covers. And they basically just recorded the show and released it because they were like they didn't have any money to go into the studio to make an album. So that's what you got. So that's another one. I totally forgot about that one. So
Yeah, yeah. All right, so this last category is a little nebulous. The live albums that are sort of live compilations. I mean, strictly speaking, almost every live album is a compilation. I mean, very rarely is it one show start to finish. Well, not rarely, but I mean, generally the idea with a live album is you take the mobile on the road. Some bands are really good with recording lots of their shows or every show of a tour or whatever. But when you're going to make a live album, that's when you record a lot of shows, and then usually what happens is you're going to get just live versions from that tour, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 shows or whatever. But sometimes it spreads a little more over time. Couple of weird ones this way. I've always felt like this one felt that way, maybe because of its title and the cover and stuff, but it's really only got, I guess, the one super old song on here. What do we got? Well, actually, we've got couple of little bells and whistles on this one. So you've got I Ain't Got You, which is the old archival recording thing, but you also got them doing The Beatles Come Together, which you don't get on a studio album. And then weirdly, you've got Chip Away the Stone on here, a Richie Supa song that sounds like a great Aerosmith song. It's just a
yeah,
really good Aerosmith song.
yeah.
But it's live. And then they put out a studio single of that. And tried to get some traction as a single. But so that's a little bit of a weird one. Then you've got stuff like this, which is more of like your basic archival live album, but technically speaking, I guess it's a compilation because it's from 2 shows, and exactly 2 shows. You've got I don't have my proper different stages, but here's a Rush different stages sampler, with I don't know if you see those songs in there, so they just put a few on there. But yeah, so this is a little bit from here and there, and then a big chunk from 1978 Hammersmith Odeon. So that's kind of cool. And then weirdly, I had forgotten, or these things, these things and you forget them, kind of thing. But the odd thing about this is that Song Remains the Same is that it's coming out in 76, 77. Anyways, so it's 73 material, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of odd for them. And then even more so, you've got Aerosmith Classics Live, and these did actually pretty well. But these are pretty compilationary from a lot of different years put together to come up with this stuff. And with Aerosmith, it's probably because they probably did a lot of bum shows, right? Where they're completely out of it, sort of thing. But then when they're on fire, they're on fire. A little bit like Led Zeppelin, a little bit like the Replacements as well. I saw those guys live, completely loaded. It was hilarious in Vancouver one time, switching instruments around and stuff. Kiss You Wanted the Best, You Got the Best. What else do we got here? Foreigner Classics Hits Live came out in 93, spanned 77 to 85. I asked my buddy Tim Derling from the Contrarians for a little bit of help here, so thanks, Tim. He mentioned these ones. Loverboy Live, Loud and Loose, spans 81 to 85. What else? Bad Company Live in Concert, 1977 and 1979. It's kind of weird. Metallica Live Shit, Binge and Purge compilation live album drawn from many shows. Traffic Last Exit, Eagles Live, basically a compilation 76 to 80. One Wild Night Live, 1985 to 2001. Bon Jovi, released in 2001. It's got the Boomtown Rats I Don't Like Mondays on it. That's pretty cool. I never knew that. Neil Young's Rockin' in the Free World. Yeah, so there's a few of these. I think it's kind of a cool idea. I've always been saying this up and down forever, and our good buddy Phil Aston. I keep imploring him. He knows so much about get the archivalness of all these live things, Deep Purple and Zeppelin. It's like I just would love to see like a 4 CD box set of Led Zeppelin in particular, where somebody has gone through and pulled the cream from the crop of all of these Zeppelin shows and saying, this is what's magic about Zeppelin, and listen for this part and that part, and listen what Bonham does here, and this is the ultimate version of Immigrant Song, and blah blah blah, right? So I love the whole idea of the compilation thing. I don't see anything wrong with it, because to me it's more like just a fun history lesson, rather than, because me, I really don't get a lot of value out of live albums anyways. So I would rather it be a scholarly exercise.
There you go. And, another like kind of variation on the compilation thing is these live albums that were culled from like a historic run at a venue over the course of a week or a weekend. So like, the Frank Zappa Roxy and Elsewhere is one. The UFO Strangers in the Night is another one. The Band of Gypsies is another one, where what they did was they recorded like a whole week or a weekend's worth of shows, and they picked like the best moments from the performances and there's your live album. And now we've seen years later, a lot of these have come out, and now you have the complete performances, so you can kind of hear all the sets that these came from. You kind of listen, oh, that's the version that was on the official live album. Now that was in day 1 or set 1 or set 2 or whatever it is. And so we see a lot of that now, because people are, once you find out that a live album that you love was comprised of recordings from like a bunch of different shows, like, well, I want to hear all the shows, right? I don't want to just hear the show that was pieced together, which actually wasn't what happened live on a given night. So we've seen lots of that as well. So Mark, we might as well, in closing, we might as well touch on this whole, is it really a live album? And these notorious live albums that rumors have been flying about for years, that were doctored up in the studio so much that it's not really live anymore, right? I mean, there's a handful of those.
Yeah. And I did a recent episode of my History in 5 Songs, the audio podcast, called I Can't Unhear That, right? And the whole idea there was that once you get told this and it goes into your brain, and then you go back and play it, and it can ruin a live album for you. And the one that everybody's kind of talking about, in our little circle recently is Ozzy Osbourne, Speak of the Devil or Talk of the Devil, right? And I noticed on Facebook somebody, the actual tapes of the show showed up, and I did go play it because I don't want it ruined for me any further than it is. I really like that album, right? But the comment there was that, boy, Ozzy's singing pretty bad on this, right? And then he went in the studio and redid it all, and then the whole idea again is it's even double tracked. Like he went in, not only re-recorded the vocals, but they're double tracked vocals, right? So, and then the notorious stuff we hear about the Kiss situation, and Van Halen, Right Here, Right Now, even that whole thing where
Unleashed in the East, yep, and Live and Dangerous, and it's like so many of these beloved live albums. It's like there's all this talk of how they were doctored up so much in the studio, but a great live album is a great live album, right? If it's so, I think the question is, what are the percentages of what the final product was? What percentage is actually live that happened when the tapes were rolling that night? And what's the percentage of what was filled in and redone and touched up in the studio? I guess that we'll never know, right?
Yeah. Maybe the Hoffman Music Forums should come up with a little ingredients sticker like you get on food, and outline that all for us. So that would be pretty cool. Like a PMRC label, right? A label that's got to go on the album that tells you exactly the ingredients, right? That would be pretty cool. Yeah.
So like Judas Priest, Unleashed in the East. So 80% all KK and Glenn, right? 10% Rob, the other 90% done in the studios because he had the flu, right? So exactly what you're getting going in, right? But
Steve Lukather, Jeff Porcaro,
Dick Wagner and Steve Hunter, right?
Yeah. Two tracks of live crowd from an old Edgar Winter show. Yeah, like that old.
I mean, that's another thing too, where we've heard where they've taken like audience reactions from a completely different show from a completely different band and pumped it into something. It's just like, why, But yeah. I don't
And
know.
and how does that work? Like I always keep forgetting this story, but the gatefold of Rainbow, Long Live Rock and Roll, that live shot of the band holding up a banner and stuff. Turns out it's a Rush concert. It's not a Rainbow concert.
Yeah. That's the one I was going to bring up. Yeah, exactly. It's like, what? The allure of the live album, you know. So yeah, so there you have it, everybody. I'm sure there's some that we didn't mention today because there's lots of examples. Martin and I yesterday we were just throwing notes back and forth, and Martin's like, we got to stop. We've got more than enough already. So
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
once you get going, you start researching this stuff and going through the collection, you just find things everywhere. It's just crazy. So
yeah,
now I got to put all this shit away. It's like, oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah.
So anyway, Martin, you got some exciting news happening on the book side, right? You got a big
Yes, just
shipment of
came
stuff.
in yesterday a new Blue Oyster Cult panel book. So the wise music swami, some contrarians people, some people have been on Sea of Tranquility as well. But basically these long situations where we go through every single studio album by a band, and this one's 300 pages. So this one's almost double the size of the Cure one that came out, and I'm working on a couple others as well. And you have expressed interest in being in one or two of these at some point. And I've always resisted doing that because I don't want I don't want to make you do any more homework than because it is a little bit of homework, right? So I've always resisted bothering you to do this. But if you want to be in some, I'm there's a couple of bands coming down the pipes that I
I'm
know you know a
volunteering
lot
it.
about.
Martin has already given me 2 band ideas, and I'm like,
Yeah,
yep,
yeah,
let's do it.
exactly. But yeah, so this just came out. It's not at martinpopoff.com yet, but you can Facebook me or email me at martinp@inforamp.net. And I'm doing PayPals. I've got, as soon as I get off of this, I got a pack of books to send out today. So yeah, every single Blue Oyster Cult album. What I love about this whole process is and I didn't think I'd enjoy doing ones on bands that I know a lot about and I've done a bunch of books on, but you get asking questions and talking about this stuff like you and I do on the show, and like one idea sparks another and you make a connection to whatever, and all of a sudden I'm like learning really cool things, and literally we're coming up with concepts live in those conversations that probably no one's ever said about Blue Oyster Cult before, and then of course they go straight into the book, and
Yeah.
so they turn out to be good substantive analysis of every studio album. So I really do stand by this one, definitely.
If I remember correctly, Stephen Reed, Jim Bakke, and Jamie Laszlo helped out on that one, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yeah. And a few contrarians folks and a few other buddies. And yeah, there's just basically find out who kind of knows and really likes this stuff, and who can potentially talk about it, and then partially it's like, okay, so here's what you got to do, and I kind of lean on it a little bit, like I don't want to scare you, but I need you to talk for 20 minutes on one album, right? And I need you to kind of go through song stuff like that, right? So, and then scares them away, and sometimes it doesn't. So yeah,
It's
fun
a little
stuff.
work, but if you're talking about albums you love, I mean, it's in a band you love, it shouldn't be that difficult. So
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. Cool. All right, God, what's coming up here? So we got in just a couple hours, we've got Ken, Martin leaves and Ken Golden comes in a couple hours. We're going to be doing the professor's picks at 3 o'clock today, Eastern Standard Time. Ken's got a whole bunch of stuff, things that are releasing today in the worlds of prog, metal, and fusion. So check that out. And then on Sunday, Jamie Laszlo and myself will be ranking the albums of Monster Magnet. So if you're a stoner rock and metal and psych fan, you don't want to miss this episode. We're ranking all their studio albums except for the covers album. And that'll be happening on Sunday morning. So stay tuned for that. And visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Also down below, we got the links to our Ko-Fi page for channel donations as well as our merch page. So you can get yourself a Sea Tranquility octopus or Kraken shirt, as I like to call it. We also have UK Connection shirts now. Many of you have asked. We finally have them. They're available in the merch store. So that link is below. Go check it out. And we'll see you back here 1 week from today at the Funhouse alongside Mr. Martin Popoff. So till then, have a good weekend, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.